Basically, what an eating disorder is that it's a persistent and severe disturbance in eating behavior around food, which stems from irrational thoughts and emotions. So, what is obvious and what is visible to us is the body and the behavior. And what's not, and we need to leave up to the experts, are dealing with the thoughts and emotions. And unfortunately, yet they do get missed or not discussed enough because of the stigma around eating disorders. There are several types and they actually look very different from one another. So I am going to talk about this just to equip you with information. So there are basically 7 types of eating disorders.
A lot of kids, they're not saying things, but what are the unsaid signs that we really need to watch out for? They may not be very obvious in terms of, mood swings or not being going down play, or, not the very, okay, let's break this further down. Obvious and unobvious signs that parents should keep in mind.
So that's a great start. Basically, what an eating disorder is that it's a persistent and severe disturbance in eating behavior around food, which stems from irrational thoughts and emotions. So what is obvious and what is visible to us is the body and the behavior, and what's not, and we need to leave up to the experts, are dealing with the thoughts and emotions. So signs and symptoms, honestly, I do hope that you have your pens out, guys, because there are plenty, and unfortunately yet they do get missed or not discussed enough because of the stigma around eating disorders. So you might find family member, your child, you might suspect that they are getting preoccupied with conversations around food. So a lot of consciousness around what is the calorie intake, the numbers, what is the fat content, what is the sugar content. And when I say preoccupation, this is significant behavior wise. So keep your eyes and ears open when you see that preoccupation, repetitive theme of almost compulsive behavior of checking this. There's you could observe excessive exercise. So a lot of strenuous exercise. If a person is always taking stairs and always wants to compromise on everything else and prioritize the workout, so that is something that is also very, very obvious. If children or any adult in your family is vanishing into the restroom for significant periods of time after meals, also binge eating, so consuming large quantities of food. You could also observe ulcerations in the mouth because of the acid reflux. There could also be discoloration or dental cavities, in the oral cavity. So that is significant. Stomach cramps, tachycardia, even bradycardia. So both of those are significant. Lots of anxiety, lots of impulsivity. You could also observe certain cuts or ulcerations or just calluses around the knuckles, when they're trying to stick their fingers in to actually purge. If you find laxatives, diuretics lying around in the room, those are also extremely significant. And I know that the list is getting longer and longer, but I think this is a very significant question, so I'll spend another minute here. If there is preoccupation with cookery shows or cooking but not eating, so very often, a member of your family, friends, you might observe that they are really, really interested in talking about food, watching a lot of cooking shows and making elaborate dishes, but for all of them are not really consumed, sometimes not even tasted by them, and they're happy to bin it. So that is another thing that could be a giveaway sign. At around meal time, if you see your children becoming fussy, don't want to come to the table, we don't want to eat right now, we'll eat later, or hiding, hoarding, or concealing food, that's another symptom. There could also be, menstrual or period irregularities in girls, so that's extremely significant. Brittle nails, hair fall, so that's another thing that you can keep an eye out for. and I feel that also a lot of up and down in weight. So if you observe that someone's putting on a lot of weight in a short period of time, or losing significant amount of time, of weight in a short period of time, that is also something that needs to be brought to the attention of a specialist.
Wow, you mentioned so many things, and I'm just dumbstruck as a parent, and I feel extremely incompetent at this moment. Suddenly, everything that I knew about parenting seems to have kind of been thrown out of the window, and it seems. And it exactly now makes me feel like, thank God there's an expert to understand this.
I hear
Tell
you.
me-
I hear you. These are all such sometimes near normal behaviors, right? Especially
Yeah.
in today's day and time. There is so much focus on food and discussion on nutrition. So I hear you. I get what you're
I
saying.
feel somewhere as a parent there is over communication on nutrition, health, fitness, and all of this. And there's something I must add, and I'm guilty as charged. For us as parents, constantly talking about and dissecting foods, right? Protein, fats, carbohydrates, diet, things. I'm on this challenge. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Do you think subconsciously somewhere this is impacting our children? Or we should have these conversations?
Well, I 100% believe in the power of information. So I feel awareness is important, but a balance is key as well. What are we communicating to children? Are these facts or opinions? Are we talking about nutrition and fitness and wellness? Or are we talking about body image, how we're looking, fat, thin, skinny? So the theme of the conversations is very important. Why? The intention of that conversation is very important. So if you're, let's say, it's very natural for us to discuss, we haven't, sweetie, this is important for you to eat. You also need some good carbs. So it's important for us to explain to them why. This has nothing to do with the way you look. It has everything to do with wellness and fitness. So I think, Mansi, awareness is important. We have to equip and empower our children with good and healthy conversations, but we have to be careful about how we present it and what is the theme around, or the intention around the conversation.
What are the different kinds of eating disorders that parents really need to watch out for, right? And also, if you're not around, how do you keep a watch on your child and know what's happening?
I'm usually wary of answering technical questions on social media. I'm going to offer this with a caveat that please don't go about diagnosing your children with yourself. I do think that this question is significant also just to empower ourselves, because while there is one category of eating disorders, there are several types and they actually look very different from one another. So I am going to talk about this just to equip you with information. So there are basically 7 types of eating disorders. The most common ones are anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. In the former, there will be a restrictive diet, a lot of weight loss, almost a look and feel of being emaciated, and almost an avoidance of coming to the table, eating at all. This can be restrictive type or the purging type. So even if they consume just a tiny bit, they might want to throw it out. Again, preoccupation with the numbers, lots of conversation around calories and the nutritional content of what is being eaten. So essentially, it's a restrictive type of eating disorder. So what you can look out for is if your child is refusing to eat, if there's too much conversation around food and weight and basically the numbers around food, and that itself should, you need to yellow flag that. There could also be a lot of guilt and shame and discussion about I landed up eating this and I shouldn't have, maybe, I'm too fat and, I need to be skinnier. So those are some of the giveaways. Then there is bulimia nervosa, which can be with or without purging. Again, this is basically an uncontrolled rapid intake of food. So they will binge eat, there's an ingestion, and then there is a compulsive need to give it out, to let it out. So they can use laxatives or, basically induce vomiting in the bathroom. So that's important to look out for. And then there are some other disturbing eating disorders, but again, important for us to be aware of them. So there is binge eating disorder, where basically they will just ingest large quantities of food, and of course there are consequences that you will not miss. There is ARFID, which is basically avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. There is PICA, where you might observe one eating non-food items or non-nutritive items. So it could be chalk, it could be mud, it could be just ice, large quantities of ice. So that's significant. It could also get into an extremely unhealthy space, which is like garbage items. So that's very important for you to, you said if the parents are not around, it's important to keep an eye out. So maybe just including family, and if you live in a joint family or there are other members, adult members in the family, to keep an eye out for that. There is rumination disorder. So basically there's long hours of chewing of food, regurgitation, chewing, throwing it out, or ingesting it back again. So that's another, you won't miss it. You'll see that there is this repetitive compulsive behavior, and then there is an otherwise non-otherwise specified category, which basically doesn't meet in terms of the time period or the number of symptoms. So we give this diagnosis if there are significant symptoms, but not enough for us to be able to diagnose them in any of the above categories. Now each one has types, subtypes. So again, word of caution that do not diagnose, because while I've given you the broad category of disorders, each one has specifications and needs to be treated in a different manner. So we're going to look at this as a whole category, that any disturbing behavior around feeding, eating, and food is something that you need to discuss with a specialist. This specialist can be a mental health professional, it can be a pediatrician, it can be a physician, or it can be a nutritionist.
And another piece that you just mentioned about if you, and India's fighting a lot of children being obese right now. We're like a diabetes capital and all of that. And somewhere we're all more scared about genetically passing that on to our children from our parents. And, we're very cautious today. How do you tell your child that you're bordering being unhealthy, or cheese, butter, sugar is unhealthy, and if you feel like they've developed a little bit of a punch, or they're moving towards that obesity angle, or just being plain unhealthy, how do you address that with your child and say, this is, you know what I'm asking, right?
Yeah.
Without calling someone unhealthy or fat, how do you say unhealthy and fat to your child?
I would say that unhealthy and fat are words that I would stay clear of in using in usage with children, because fat will stay. Believe me, they'll lose the weight and then they'll still remember that, Mom, you called me fat at one point. So they have an incredible memory when it comes to our slips. So I'd say that focusing the whole conversation around fitness. Are you feeling fit? Are you able to engage in physical activities? How quickly? I noticed that you're getting tired very quickly. What do you feel? How can I help you with your fitness and wellness goals? Would you like to set some goals? Would you like some help in setting new goals? And then how can I help you achieving them? Just making observations, for example, that I noticed that you're using food as a replacement for boredom. Can I help you figure out how not to get bored? And not use food to fill up those gaps. I also noticed that sometimes when you're upset, you're eating. Can we talk about that? So invite conversation. I also feel that invite conversation around physical activity. That's extremely important. And that said, to be honest and to use facts. So make a weight chart, and we all have those, at least until the children are about 12 or 13. And make them observe, how do you feel about this? Is there something I can do? Is there something that we can do together? So, the weighing scale doesn't lie. And, you do it yourself, get them to do it and say, hey, how do you feel about this weight increase? Would you like any conversation or help, around your goals for fitness and wellness? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.